If you turn around a client from a negative to positive, they're going to tell that story much more than they've just had a good time.
Welcome to another edition of the NiceJob Podcast. If you like what you hear, please give this video a like and subscribe to get new content first. As always, these are just the highlights of our episode. For the full conversation, head to our podcast platforms. All right, let's see who our guest is today.
Hi, it's Barry Moltz, Small Business Starship Commander. You know, what you sell, people can get anywhere. That's why I'm going to show you how you can focus on the customer experience so your customers keep coming back for more.
In this particular episode, we're going to talk about something around reputation. Yes, we're a reputation marketing podcast, so you think we talk about that each and every episode, but we actually haven't explored the topic, and you don't want to hear from the reputation marketing software company about reputation, so we sought the expert on a lot of business topics, but this one in particular I know he's going to give great insight on, and you know, every single episode I say I'm excited about the guest, and I say I'm excited about the topic, but it's always true. I'm in a great position to talk to great people and start to pick their brain. Hopefully you can come along the journey and learn some things with me. So let's dive in. After that sort of preamble, it's time to introduce our guest. It is Barry Moltz, and I always ask our guests, just to make sure I get the title correct, what they want. And he gave me his official title, which is Starship Commander. And if you are running a business, that's probably what it feels like, that you're in command of this big ship, and maybe there's too many buttons, maybe there's too many features. Well, we got the Commander here. So Commander, thank you very much for joining us on the NiceJob Podcast.
Thank you. And you usually don't have like a Scotty or a Spock or a Bones or something like that. And I have to say, I always say I'm excited to be here when everyone interviews me, but right now I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So we got double excitement going. So if you weren't ready to tune in for a full episode now, you know the excitement level's off the charts. Barry, you know, normally when you have an interview like this, perhaps if our audiences are familiar with the guest, you kind of want to run through some backstory, run through some history, but sometimes I find that people go a little bit too far back. They're like, well, I was born in this hospital and my mom did this for a living, things like that. So I want to fast forward a bit and try to either pinpoint a moment, if it's there in your history, when you kind of started to feel that you had a lot of knowledge that was worthy of sharing, right? Because everyone kind of goes through their own personal journey. You're doing things for your family, you're doing things for yourself, but then there's someone to take that extra step. And you've gone on, you know, you're an author, you host your own podcast. Was there a moment where you're like, you know what? I really want to start sharing what I know with other people?
Yeah, I think when I sold my last business and my wife said to me, if you want to stay together, no more businesses, because we had been kicked out of business, we had gone into business, and we sold the last business. She said, that's it. I've been through too many highs and lows. And at that point, and this was right after the internet bubble of the late 90s, I thought I had something to share, because at that point, Sean, people thought, well, all I got to do to actually sell my business is scratch a couple ideas down in a napkin and sell it to a VC for millions of dollars. And what my first book, which is called You Need to Be a Little Crazy, The Truth About Starting and Growing Your Own Business, talked about was, it is a great journey, but there's a lot more to it than that, and there's a lot of ups and downs, and that's part of the fun of it.
And looking back, obviously we tried to do a tiny bit of research. I think to come in actually as cold as possible, but you know, I just want to make sure we know enough. Is looking at some of the titles of your books and some of the topics, you really kind of see the evolution of business throughout. And it's always a universal truth that things are kind of going to go through change and go through shifts. But do you think there's a little bit of cyclical nature? And where I'm kind of going with this is, in our topic of reputation today, is in a digital world, word of mouth still exists, but it kind of changes. But that feels like that core concept of having a good reputation has always remained. So in your mind, how cyclical is business, or how much is it actually continuously moving forward and evolving?
Well, I think the themes are exactly the same. They just get implemented in different ways, right? So word of mouth was always there. If someone recommended someone to someone else, right? You skipped all those other layers and you went to trusted advisor. Now, someone that we don't know, if they write a great review on a website, you trust that almost as much as if someone you did know. So the tactics just change, but the same thing that people feel has always been there.
And do you think it's even more important as we've kind of shifted to almost a broadcast society? I mean, anyone with a phone now has an HD camera, can kind of put out any sort of message, and people out of nowhere seem to get these large platforms where, you know, some kid in the Midwest all of a sudden has 1 million followers on TikTok. That's quite an audience. So when you talk about like amplifying your customers' voices, I feel like that's got to be especially more important because they become their own broadcasters.
Yeah, I mean, I keep thinking that we used to call people that used to share a lot, recommend a lot of folks as sneezers, right? And if you think about when you sneeze, it goes all around. Whatever you just sneezed goes all around people that are right to you. But now people have huge megaphones. I mean, this idea of misinformation, truth, whatever it is, recommendations, they've always been there throughout society. But now the megaphones just got bigger and communication spreads that much faster, Sean.
So in the world of influencers, right? Because there's some people now that have gotten savvy and they understand that some people are getting paid to make brand. How do you still get great amplification of organic reviews? I mean, I don't think anyone's expecting Mary down the street to be an influencer, but at the same time, I think people have gotten a little bit more investigatory when it comes to looking at like testimonials on a website, right? Trying to figure out, was that copywritten or is that kind of true? In your mind, is there any strategy, is there any tactic of how to make sure that you're getting the best amplification of organic reviews?
Well, first of all, you've got to ask, and you've got to continually ask, and you need to have a mechanism to continually ask. Unfortunately, asking for reviews, asking referrals is always second. It always takes the back seat for so many companies because they get a new customer, they're servicing it, and then they go out to get another new customer. They don't think about trying to get a review at every stage during the process. And if you don't have a mechanism, like in any part of marketing, to actually do it, what I call automagically for you or consistently, it's never going to happen. And I don't think, marketing influencers or small business influencers, they're important, but I think people are pretty savvy. They want to look at it and they want to say, how many reviews does this thing have? Does it have at least 20 or 30 reviews? And are some of them bad? And if they are bad, what did the company do about it? I know I use TripAdvisor a lot to say, should I stay at this hotel or not? And I look at a lot of the bad reviews because I want to know if someone posted a bad review, did management say something? Because I believe if I have a bad experience, at least I know they'll be there and they'll help me out. Because every once in a while, you're going to have a bad experience, Sean. It's just the way it is.
And it's the evolution, right? The evolution of a relationship. Because if you see a review from 3 years ago that says this business showed up late and wasn't on time, and then you see 2 years ago they weren't on time, and a year ago they weren't on time, it kind of becomes a trend. And if that's important to you as a consumer, that's probably going to steer you the other way. Because I've always said that I think when people read reviews, good, bad, or indifferent, they're really looking for themselves. Do you find you're doing that same thing? You're trying to find something that identifies. You talk about TripAdvisor, like someone saying, hey, this beach is like this. And you're like, I'm not that type of person. Right. That's a great review, but doesn't identify.
Right. So if someone says, I'm looking at TripAdvisor and says, well, this was a great place for a family vacation. I'm on a business trip. I skip to the next one. Right. So again, you're right, Sean. You want to see yourself in those reviews because, again, it goes like this. If this company serviced this person pretty well, if I'm similar to them, chances are I'll have a good experience as well. I don't even read the product descriptions anymore that the hotels or people put out there. I just read the reviews. That shows how important it is.
That's a very interesting point that you bring up because we talk about, there's a recent stat that it was I believe it was 12 times more credible than what a salesperson's saying. And we kind of in the reputation marketing space say, if you have your reviews front and center, that's going to get them to the sales call, right? And then that's when they're ready to receive that message. Instead of perhaps, I don't say selling from the step one, because obviously you have to be, out front in that regard, but kind of building that trust and into that gateway, which kind of goes back to, all right, if they're identifying people through their reviews, is there something a business owner should be doing while asking or through their review system to ensure that they're getting different stories? Because the one complaint that we kind of hear is, I get a bunch of 5-star reviews with no detail.
Or it was
Is
great.
There anything that you've kind of discovered a strategy to get that?
5-star review, it was great, and that was it. Yeah, I think you should ask them for as much detail as possible because, again, we always learn through stories. And as much as you can tell a story in your review, the specific circumstances about, so for example, I'll review a hotel. I got in late at night. My plane was delayed. And there was someone right at the counter and they said, oh God, you look like you've had a long plane ride. I know you checked in online already. Here's your thing. I'll get you right to your room. The more specifics I can give you, go, God, sometimes I arrive late at hotels. I know I'm going to be taken care of. I don't have to worry about that. So try to get them to tell stories in their reviews.
And you talked about replying, or getting back or seeing how management changes their reviews. We kind of have to talk about the bad reviews in a way. I'm a big proponent that every review is a marketing opportunity, right? Because you can show how you're going to learn and grow, and then in the future show, prove that you've done that. Even the mid-range ones, your 3 or 4, kind of shows that you're able to identify that, hey, maybe we didn't live up to that expectation, but here's the steps you're kind of going to do it. Is it past the time that businesses should be quote unquote fearful and doing kind of shady tactics like review gating and things like that to avoid bad reviews? Or have we finally reached the time of, look, embrace feedback, just actually use it and learn from it?
I tell small businesses they got to grow up. Not everybody's going to like you, and everyone's going to have an amazing review or amazing experience. Find out what you did wrong, go out and fix it, and make sure that chances are it doesn't happen again. So for example, I just bought some fancy pool furniture from Frontgate. It came damaged, right? So I posted on the website saying, hey, I bought this expensive furniture from Frontgate. It came damaged. I showed some pictures. They responded literally within an hour, right, to that. They had me contact them. They're sending new furniture, no cost, and I can keep the old stuff. So to me, I'm going to write and say, hey, this is really what happened. I think that's really helps them in the review process more than just a positive review. If you turn around a client from a negative to positive, they're going to tell that story much more than they've just had a good time.
Yeah, and I love that you said that you added photos, obviously to kind of show like your experience, and that's the power that the customer has. But as the business owner, you also have the ability to use visuals, I don't say to your advantage, but to help kind of tell the complete story. So, kind of crafting, perhaps if you're taking photos of the work you're doing, you get that great review, matching those together. That kind of tells the complete story. But I find that a lot of businesses just haven't really adopted or really taken to the visual mediums. And not necessarily, I want to make clear here, is videos are great. I find video testimonials tend not to travel as well. The studies really aren't behind it to show it goes. So I think text-based for the review sake. But like photos, videos of your crew and your team really helps to build that connection further. But it seems that not many people are taking it on. In your opinion, why isn't that happening?
Well, I think it takes more time, right? And I think that, again, the reason that I posted pictures, because I wanted to show the damage that really came, because again, I'm a customer experience nut, and I wanted them to be able to appreciate what really had happened. Again, you buy from a first-rate company, you expect to get first-rate products. I think that videos don't travel well because it takes too long. People want to read something quick about the review for a handful of seconds and then move on to the next one. It's not each individual one, it's them combined together. I know the way that I shop a lot of times on Amazon is I won't buy anything that doesn't have 20 reviews or more, whether they're positive or negative, right? I want to make sure there's a core number of people that have purchased these things. And if this one has 10,000 reviews versus something has 60,000 reviews, even if it's a little bit more negative, I'll buy the one that had 60,000 because I feel, well, the chances are I'll have a better experience. It's just the way that I do things. The problem, Sean, is that small business owners don't pursue as a marketing strategy to get these reviews. Even though they understand how important it is, they just don't have a mechanism in place to do it.
Do you think that is a product of just being so focused on getting the craft right and not really thinking about the full compliment? Because I always bring up that, like restaurants, for example, they put tip right on the receipt, right on the bill, right? They tell you, like, this is your time to give us the feedback. We're putting it right here.
And what the tip percentage should be with the dollar amount, so you don't have to do the math in your head.
Exactly. I love that where it's like, oh, 15%, good, this, great. I love those things. And it's funny, in that industry, it doesn't seem to be an issue. But for, in NiceJob's audience in particular, a lot of home service professionals, that doesn't seem to be the case. Do you think it's because they're focused on the craft? Do you think it's just this over politeness that seems to carry on? What is that barrier you think that's keeping most people down?
I think it's the same barrier why people don't automate their marketing or have a consistent marketing strategy. They just they're so focused on delivering their product or service, they're not thinking about the sales and marketing pipeline. And so they just don't have the tools to do it. They don't get around to it. But there are tools available now, like NiceJob, where you can actually automate it. Once you set it up, it just happens. It just goes. It takes a little time to set it up, but then you can get a whole pipeline of reviews just like for sales and marketing. They just don't think about it, and they haven't discovered the tools that can help them.
And it also becomes like customer-driven growth, right? So now one customer is helping you get another customer, and that cycle kind of builds on. And that's such a great foundation to build a business on, because now not only are you getting feedback that's going to help you craft, your culture, your systems, your processes, but now you're kind of getting this referral system going. And one thing in particular I did want to touch on was we looked over the past 2 years or so, pandemics and lockdowns and things like that. I feel like the businesses that use reputation as part of the foundation were the ones that came through that the strongest. Have you seen the same?
Absolutely, because again, when things are down, right, people are going to go back to their most trusted source because they have some comfort in it. And if you had a solid relationship. Now, that being said, it was also a time, I believe, in the last year and a half where loyalty was up for grabs, right? Because people were doing things differently. I mean, I tell the story where I've been traveling on American Airlines for 40 years. I have 3 million miles in that airline. But during the pandemic, they decided they were not going to keep the middle seat on the airplane vacant. And for whatever reason, maybe it's nonsensical, but I felt more safe having the middle seat vacant. So I stopped flying American Airlines and I started flying Southwest Airlines because they kept the middle seat open. So now, post-pandemic, now that I'm vaccinated, I won't say that all the time I fly Southwest now, but I fly Southwest a heck of a lot more than I did before the pandemic because I'm aware of them and the experience that I had.
Yeah, and you know what? You talk about the loyalty kind of being up, but it also talks about like identifying, right? And it's almost that Americans said these are the type of customers that we're considering. I mean, they'll try to serve anybody they can, but this is the type we're looking for. And so sometimes making changes, either big or small, can kind of affect that relationship. But I think it also goes back to the reason you want to make a connection and accept that feedback is to kind of establish right away that this is a relationship, right? That no matter what.
Yeah, you bring up the idea of relationship. This is what customers want. They don't just want to buy your product or service. They can pretty much get that anywhere. They want to have a relationship. They want to have an experience with you. They want to know that they're part of something, right? Why do you think, people at Harley Davidson and Apple and, I'm a cyclist, so I love the Specialized brand or Rafa or something like that. We want to feel like we're part of a larger community, and that requires to have a personal experience with your company. And the good news is there's all sorts of electronic tools to make sure that personalized experience happens. It used to be that you had to apply people to have a personalized experience, right? I don't know if you remember when people used to pump your gas at gas stations, right? Now, if you don't want to pump your gas, you still can go to New Jersey and you can go to Oregon, right? They pump the gas for you. Yep. But they used to come out in uniforms. They used to clean your windshield, look at your oil, vacuum your car. And they had to apply people for that service, but now computers can do it for that and personalize everything. I mean, we all remember when Amazon started, when I would log onto their site with cookies, it would say, "Hi, Barry, how are you?" It would call me by name. Versus when I used to go to the Gap store down the street, which I'd been 12 times, they had no idea who I was and what I had bought from them. So they want that personal relationship.
And it brings up an interesting point because you talk about pumping gas, and I spent a lot of time in my life in New Jersey. I do know how to pump my own gas. Can't say the same for my sister. But the interesting part about it, though, is the frustration of someone else pumping your gas as you saw the pump get easier. So there was that weird sort of balance of I became more critical of how quickly I was being serviced. How quickly, I saw the pump click, why don't I have my receipt? Why am I sitting here waiting for you? Is that my expectations, because it seemed so easy, became a little bit higher, right? I never before, when they were still doing card swipes and things like that, thought about how quick gas should be until I went over the bridge to Pennsylvania, realized it's a boom, bit, and done. It's funny that now as customers, you talk about online chat bots and things like that, there's kind of this desire to want to be a part of the process even more. I think gone are the days where I'm just calling the expert and it kind of goes. People are doing research before they call, and they're looking to constantly kind of be in contact, have those things. And I think that kind of speaks to your point of kind of embracing technology a little bit and really diving into it and making sure that you don't stretch yourself out thin as a person. Also ensures that you're matching the needs of your customer.
And I think you have to think about it differently. I wrote my third book that talked about what does the customer experience look like in a self-service world. People would much rather schedule an appointment online than call to schedule an appointment. Most people would rather order online than call a person or something like that. So the expectations have changed, and you have to make that interface with your company, that conversation, that electronic conversation with the company, a lot easier, or the way that people want to consume your product or service. Now, certainly if you have an older generation customer where your customer's in the 80s, maybe it's a little bit different. but most other people, they'd rather just do self-serve. I mean, it's funny because self-serve started back in it was in the 20s or the 40s with the automats, in New York. I don't know if you're familiar with the automat where, you just put the sandwiches in the vending machine, used to take them out, and that was all self-serve. And that was kind of popular. And then, of course, it morphed into the ATM cards, right, with Barclays. And then you didn't need a teller anymore. But what's very interesting to me, Sean, is the only area that self-serve really has not really been the preferable way is really when you check into a hotel. They've tried self-serve check-in hotel, except for Las Vegas, because, of course, things are different there. But people want to be welcomed into your home by another person. And the people behind the desk now, I don't know if you've noticed at the fancy hotels, they come around the side of the desk and they give you the key. And there's less of the division. So you got to know your audience.
Yeah, I didn't really think about that, but the last time I checked in the hotel, that's exactly kind of what happened, and it's a small subtle thing. But it's funny, I didn't really recognize it. Sometimes I try to, I guess, as a non-traditional marketer or someone that in that people side of things, look for oh, that's why they're doing that, and that one kind of went aside. But it definitely felt more of a comforting thing. If someone's not ready to pop on the helmet and the cycling shoes and catch you across Wisconsin, but they want to hear more about you or they want to check you out in some sort of way, I know I'll kind of give the shout out there. Host of the Small Business Radio Show that you're kind enough to have me on. Nice job, sponsoring a couple episodes over there as well. But if someone wants to get in touch or learn more about you, where should we direct them?
Sure,
towards?
just go to my website, which is barrymoltz.com, BARRYMOLTZ.com. Or any of the social media. I'm at Barry Moltz, except for TikTok. Still don't do TikTok.
All right, you're just trying to gear up on all the dances before you officially launch on the platform?
I just don't have the moves.
Barry, thank you so much for all those that are watching or listening. We have all those links and descriptions down in the show notes as well. And I have a feeling I put it on screen in the editing. So you can see it right there. So be sure to connect with Barry. Pick up some of those books as well. We just ordered the Nice Job crew. We ordered a couple over here. And I know our team's going to start diving through them. Barry, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us here on the Nice Job Podcast. And have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Sean. You did a nice job.
Thanks so much for checking out the video. Remember, you can listen to the full episode of our podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Buzzsprout, or wherever you get your podcasts. Here on YouTube, I want to invite you to subscribe by clicking right there, or you can check out 2 other videos. One, our most recent podcast, and the other to learn a little bit more about Nice Job. So click one of those things, and I can go home.